Hello and welcome to a pair of videos about Chapter 14 of Government in America. This chapter covers the bureaucracy. Um, and Bureaucrats and the bureaucracy are often the target of complaints from people who don't like the decisions they make or the process through which they make those decisions. They don't complain about bureaucrats telling them what to do or how long it takes to get something through the bureaucracy. We'll see how many times I trip over the word bureaucracy in these two videos. But without the bureaucracy, it would be difficult for an enterprise as large as the federal government to function. Why? We need to take a minute to explain some key features of a bureaucracy. See, bureaucracies usually have very stable organizational structures where one group of workers reports to a supervisor, who then also has a supervisor, who has a supervisor of their own, and so on. This hierarchical structure helps keep things organized, but it might cause issues to take more time to resolve while they pass through all of those levels of the structure. Now, the people working in the bureaucracy are supposed to have a level of expertise in their field to handle technical issues. I would not get hired by the IRS to analyze tax returns because I do not know the tax code well enough. Also, don't want to talk about math, but the point is that these experts do know how to handle all of the very technical, small details that can cause one situation to be decided one way and then a slightly different situation to be decided in a different way. And then you want these experts to function within a formal system of rules and procedures. They shouldn't just make things up based on their gut instinct or what they feel or sort of their mood. All right. Now, this is why you don't just walk into a government office and ask for a passport. You fill out the proper forms. You include the proper documentation and so on. Why go through all of this trouble to set up the systems and the procedures and all of these things? Because these formal systems are supposed to ensure that the bureaucracy is impartial in its operations. If I don't have my proper proof of birth, I'm not getting that passport, even if my best friend is running the passport office. Now, all that said, does the system always work in this ideal format? Of course not. But that's the overall goal and purpose of a bureaucracy. Have a system where people who know what they're doing can analyze the details of a situation and make a proper, impartial, fair decision. Now, one of the things that's supposed to help make the bureaucracy work this way is that most of the members of the federal bureaucracy are part of what's called the civil service. The idea of a civil service is that the people who fill the government jobs should be there because of their skills and not because they're friends with someone powerful who was able to hire them for the job. In order to be hired for a civil service job, an applicant needs to prove their qualifications through some kind of test or evaluation process. There used to be a standard test called the civil service test that anybody who wanted to work in the federal civil service would take. But now individual departments are able to set up their own requirements. The whole idea of a civil service was meant to replace the spoils system, where the winner of an election would just give out government jobs as rewards to his or her supporters. You may remember from American history, various arguments about different presidents and how much they liked the spoils system or how much they might have worked to try and implement a civil service. As a result of that implementation, today there are fewer patronage jobs for elected officials to give out, but they do still get to appoint the people in charge of the bureaucracy. If you remember talking about the executive branch, the president is appointing the heads of the cabinet departments who are then telling the various bureaucrats what to do, or the executive agencies, so on and so forth. So through these appointees, the president can direct the federal bureaucracy, but the actual work is going to get done by the civil servants who have to handle the day-to-day affairs of the government. So the cabinet departments and other executive agencies make up a significant part of the federal bureaucracy. The president appoints the head of the department, usually called the secretary. The secretary must be confirmed by the Senate. So the head of the State Department is the Secretary of State, the head of the Defense Department is the Secretary of Defense, and so on. There are some exceptions. For example, the head of the Justice Department is the Attorney General, not the Secretary of Justice. The President also appoints undersecretaries, other high-ranking officials, and again, this happens with the approval of the Senate. I will put a link to the full list of cabinet departments in the notes to this video if you're looking for more detail. Independent regulatory commissions are also appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. But unlike cabinet officials, the President can't fire the commissioners. That's where the independence comes in. The idea is that once confirmed, the commissioners can make what they think are the best decisions. One example of an independent regulatory commission is the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. This commission must set rules and standards for communications equipment like live TV and radio broadcasters, telephones, internet devices. So these rules are very important to companies like Comcast, Netflix, Google, Apple. The interest groups that work with these companies and their customers pay a lot of attention to the rules set by these commissions. If you have followed the ongoing discussion of net neutrality rules for the internet, you know about the influence a regulatory commission can have and how much energy companies, citizens, and interest groups can put into knowing what and influencing what these commissions do. There are also a few organizations that are not strictly part of the government, but they get a lot of money from the government, and the government exercises a lot of control over them. These government corporations are given a specific responsibility and funding to help them cover the losses that they incur carrying out that responsibility. They can also get government approval to have a monopoly on certain services in order to help them make money. So the U.S. Postal Service is the only organization that can deliver daily residential mail. But in exchange, in part, for having that monopoly, it has to deliver mail to everywhere, even if it's someplace out of the way that costs more money to deliver to than the cost of the postage. There are other executive agencies that are too small to qualify as cabinet departments, but they function in a similar fashion. The President appoints the leaders, the Senate confirms them, and if the President doesn't like what they're doing, the President can fire them. Examples of these agencies include NASA and the Environmental Protection Agency. All right, so that's a bit of an overview of many of the organizations that make up the federal bureaucracy. In the next video, we'll talk a little bit more about what bureaucrats actually do and how other parts of the government can influence the bureaucracy. Until then, I'll leave you with these questions for further thought and discussion.